Your company isn't scaling because there is a bottleneck stopping you from doing so. And in this video, we're going to dive deep into the concept of bottlenecks and how is it that we can create leverage in your business so that you can scale tomorrow. What's up? My name is Kajana. Most people call me Cage. I run a company called Powered by Aloha, and we do a very, very simple thing, and that is we scale companies. Whether you are a small mom and pop store or you are a multi-billion-dollar operation, our clients, literally at this very moment, our smallest one does $1,200 a month. Our largest one does close to $900 million a month. Completely different spectrums of the business world, but they all do the same thing, or rather, they all come to us for the same thing, and that is the ability to scale. In this video, we're going to talk about what it looks like to identify and eliminate the bottlenecks in your business. And so with that, let's jump right into it. Okay, so before we can talk about bottlenecks and eliminating them, there's a concept that you have to really be able to wrap your mind around. And that concept is leverage. Oh, wrong way. See, when we're thinking about scaling the company, the question we're looking at is how can we get more leverage out of the existing activities before we add on new activities? And the reason we think of it this way is if we are able to get more leverage out of our existing activities, we will then have the resources, money, energy, mental capacity, people who work for you, time, in order to do new things. So I want you to think of the example like this. Imagine every time, I'm going to take the background off of this. Imagine every time you work 10 hours, you make $100. This is your status quo, right? 10 hours of work is $100 of money generated. That isn't very good, and it's actually really bad. But this concept will apply directly. There are two ways that you can get leverage out of this. On one hand, what if you can keep the exact same amount of hours that you work, which is 10 hours, but you were able to generate $200. So in this model, you have not changed your input, right? The number of hours you've worked. You've changed your output, the number of dollars that you make. Now let's flip this the other way. What if you were able to continue making $100, but instead of taking you 10 hours, it takes you only 5 hours. In this scenario, you are doing the exact same amount, or rather you are doing half the input, but you are getting double the output from that perspective, right? 5 hours in, $100 out. Or 10 hours in, $200 out. Both of these apply the same concept of leverage. And that is, how can you change one side of the equation being input to output? How can you change one side of this equation so that you are doing less input but getting the exact same output? Or you are getting the exact same output, I confused myself. Or you are doing the exact same input for double the output. This is the question we have to ask ourselves. When we think of it this way, it puts a lot more constraints around how you look at your business and what is or is not working. Very easy example. Let's say that you are running a budget of $100 a day on your paid advertising. And from that, you were able to generate one sale of $1,000. $100 day of ads is one $1,000 sale. How can we get a $1,000 sale on $50? Or how can we get a $2,000 worth of sales on $100? Very easy math to make it very simple. Same concept. If you're taking 10 sales calls a week, and of those 10 sales calls, you're closing one sale, how can you take only 5 sales calls and close one sale? Or how can you take 10 sales calls and close 2 sales, or 3 sales to be mathematically accurate from a benchmark perspective? When we think of it this way, it really puts a different parameter on how we look at what is the bottleneck actually stopping the business from going, because there are many little problems your business is dealing with all the time. Things aren't working, people aren't working, money or cash flow rather isn't meeting the time frame of what you need it. Vendors are late, suppliers are late, team is late, not enough leads coming in. You run into an issue with your meta thing, your emails aren't firing, your SMS, all of those things, sure, totally, all problems and all worth solving. But not all of those problems are the thing that's going to generate the most leverage for your company. So when we are looking at solving bottlenecks, the name of the game is, what is the problem that when solved will generate the most leverage possible? Because if we can solve that, you're going to see a maybe 1.2 increase in revenue, maybe a 1.4 increase in revenue, or on the other side, maybe we see a 10, 20, 30, 50% decrease in costs, which will mathematically give you more opportunity, more money, more resources to then apply the next thing, and then the next thing, and then the next thing, and so on and so forth. Now, on that, one very quick note is when we talk about bottlenecks, bottlenecks never stop. There will always be a bottleneck stopping your business. It's simply a matter of which is the bottleneck that we need to solve right now. Because when you add more headcount, as you add more advertising, as you add more sales, as you need more supply, as you need more materials available to you, and the company continues to grow and grow and grow, there will always be a bottleneck stopping you from going. The question simply is, which is the bottleneck that we need to solve now that will create the most leverage? So back to the illustration. So this is the concept of leverage, and that is, again, input to output. How can we increase output without changing input, or how can we decrease input without changing output? That's the entire name of the game. Now, the way that we do this, and now you're going to see our proprietary model, the Bottleneck Matrix. Basically, we are looking at a company and we are asking ourselves, which of these categories is the biggest problem? So let me kind of walk you through this tool. Now, if you've never seen one before, this is the magic quadrant. It's just a fancy way of saying, how can we simplify problems into 4 categories? So on one hand, we have the category that is revenue. In the revenue category, which is going to be here, this is all revenue. The question is the problem that there's not enough marketing activities happening? Or is the question that the leads are broken? These are not the right leads to be marketing to generate, to close. 2 different problems, though very often business owners will combine them into one. Equally, on the operation side, is there unnecessary friction? Is it just too hard to get information or to do things because there's just all this friction that makes it difficult to implement? Versus, is it that the work just takes too long itself? Is something that should be taking 2 days of work actually taking 4 days of work? Very simple ways to look at that. Now, when we flip it the other way, we have our solutions. Typically, when you don't have enough marketing activities, and you have unnecessary friction, you typically have a technology problem. That being, your technology is not set up in a way that's easy to get reporting to implement for people to follow. You have to kick this thing and push that thing and then push this button, but then move that thing in order to get it to work. It's typically the way that we're going to solve a not enough marketing activities or unnecessary friction problem. Versus if you're running into broke leads or your work is taking too long, you probably have a system problem. Now, the big difference between technology and system is the technology is something that you set up and it kind of does it itself and or does a lot of the work for you. Whereas from a system perspective, it is step 1, step 2, step 3, but in this scenario, step 3 is actually step 4, but in this scenario, step 3 is actually step 6, unless it's in this scenario that's actually step 3 is the end of the workflow and there's no more work to be done. So if you think of it like if you work in a restaurant, right? If you are going to make a burger, right? The burger is, I'm going to make it up right now. You get the buns, you toast the buns, you fry the meat, you throw the meat on, you fry the cheese, you throw it on, you fry the vegetables, the hot vegetables, so onions, you throw it on. Then you put in your cold vegetables, which can be like a lettuce and a tomato, and then that's done. But then what if they don't want onions? Or what if they want no grilled onions? Or versus they want a grilled tomato, or they don't want grilled buns, they want double the meat. All those things are the concept of getting the work to be done. So work takes too long. So these are the 4 categories of bottlenecks that exist in your business. And if your business is not scaling the way you want it to, I can guarantee one of these is the problem. Like, I'm not making this up. Every business, if you look at business models, 80% of business models are the exact same. 20% is customized based upon industry and the model in which you're actually operating it. But for the most part, these are all the same things. Like I said, we have businesses as small as 1,200. We have businesses as big as several $100 million. And this is always the same. It just looks different per industry and or the threads you have to pull to identify what the actual problem is just longer. That's all it is. So when we think about this, a question to ask yourself always is, when we're looking at these 4 quadrants, is it that there's not enough marketing activities? Easy one. If you're making social media content and you're posting on Instagram, why aren't you posting it on Facebook and to YouTube Shorts and to TikTok and to potentially LinkedIn? By just increasing the number of channels you post onto, if you're making 1 video a week on Instagram, by just moving it to those platforms, you now have 5x the leverage because you're now doing the same video on 5 different platforms. On the other hand, now, if you think about that, now if you're doing 1 video a week, what if you do 1 video a day? That means you're going to be getting 5 videos per day per platform. That means over the course of a week, you'll have gotten, instead of just 7 pieces of content, you'll now have gotten 35 pieces of content out and visible, which means mathematically you have 5x the opportunity to get in front of someone who wants to buy your product. Easy math. Now let's continue down this concept. Broke leads. A very easy example of this is, let's say that you are on sales calls and or you have sales opportunities being generated. In every 10 sales calls, you actually close 1, which is mathematically below benchmarks. Benchmarks for selling stuff is going to be 20 to 30% overall on qualified leads. So the question becomes, is it that your sales motion isn't good and you're not getting enough conversions, versus is the problem that of the 10 leads who booked, only 2 of them were qualified? So therefore, from that perspective, you're actually doing really well because you're converting 1 and 2 qualified leads. But then the question is, why are you wasting 8 hours potentially in this 1-hour sales call scenario talking to leads who can't buy from you? So in this model, we're looking at how can we change the flow so that we are able to get less sales calls, less volume, but more conversion? Or isn't the problem that you're just not targeting the right people overall? So how can we target more of the right people so that you maintain the same amount of volume, but you're getting more conversions on top of that as well? Some simple ways to look at the broke leads model. Then if we come down here to work takes too long, well, I've already done this scenario about the burger, but let's do another one. Let's say that you are like a website agency and your job is to make websites and deliver to clients. And to you, a website should take only 12 days to turn around, right? 12 days to do the entire copy strategy, writing the words, aka copywriting, deving it, running it through QC, and then rolling it out. But for some reason, your team is taking 16 days. So then the question we have to ask ourselves is, why is it? Is 12 days actually feasible? Oh yeah, if I do it by myself, I can totally do 12 days. Okay, so if you by yourself could do it in 12 days, but your team is taking 16 days, one question we have to ask ourselves is, what do you know that your team doesn't know? And why is that not standardized information? Versus, let's say it's like, oh no, it takes 16 days is reasonable. Oh, sorry, 12 days is reasonable. Just that they're taking long. Okay, is it that they're taking too long individually? Is it your copywriter is taking too long to write the copy? Or is it the designer is taking too long to design the image? Or is it that the developer is taking too long to develop the site? Or is it that between the copywriter and the design, it's taking too long for the client to give feedback? Or is it that between the designer and the dev, it's taking too long to make clear what it is that it should look like, and therefore the dev is operating off of activities they don't actually know? These are the questions we have to ask ourselves when we say the work is taking too long. Because if we can identify what that problem is, then we can reduce it and actually be able to produce something in this 12-day of this fictitious model I just made up. I don't know what I'm talking about. I'm totally making it up. Then finally, we have unnecessary friction. That's how can the company move faster? So for example, let's say that you are running paid advertising, but you can only see how much money you're spending every 7 days. If you can only see it every 7 days, maybe that's a good amount of time. Maybe that's not enough time. But what you're seeing is that when you go 7 days to see the data, in creating this data, you have to go in and you have to spend 10 hours yourself in order to get this data. Why couldn't we just automate something that takes only 1 hour of your time, but still gets you the data within your 7-day turnaround? That'd be an example of just a very simple friction, right? Having to pull that data together, or having someone on your team pulling that data together in order to present it to you. Another way to look at this is, let's say you have a cash flow business, or rather, you have a business where cash flow is super important, right? Because you are constantly paying bills and or paying people. High repetition sales orgs and or e-commerce brands come to mind. If it takes your vendor team 10 days to give you the money that you need in order to understand how much you have to pay, but then it's taking 4 days for revenue to clear into your bank account, then that means you have this space right here where there's nothing happening. How is it that we can take this 4 days down to 3 days? How is it we can take this 10-day time period into 8 days, so you're able to have less friction when you're doing this? And these are all the ways that we're looking at really identifying what bottleneck is stopping your business. Because as you can tell, in a business model, all of these could be happening at one time. Like literally at one time, you could only be doing one piece of content, so you're only generating 10 leads. And on the 10 leads, you are only closing 10% of them. But at the same time, when you close that person, what should be taking 12 days is taking 16 days. But then at the same time, once that money comes in, you're unable to time out the payment of your contractors or your employees, because the cash flow of when they pay versus when it's available to this things to be paid out is happening. All of these things could literally be happening at one time in your company. And the question is, which of these do we solve first? I don't know, because I have no idea. Every company is different. And there are different facts that go into this. But when we think about it, it becomes a self-perpetuating loop of it just gets worse and worse. And before you know it, you don't have a business that's scalable, and your business is not scalable, and it's not something that is bringing you in money that you're able to operate and then make from. It becomes an extremely high-paying job where you have to manage the stress and the people and all these things because the system is actually working against you instead of working for you, which as the owner of your business, operator of your business, the system should be working for you and making it easier to operate the business, because ultimately the goal is how can we get that system so systemized that the operator, you the founder, can actually extract themselves from the business in order to hire people who run the machine. Turnkey is a very common word that's used by people in this scenario, but these are real questions to ask. So when we look at this, the question you're probably thinking is, oh shit, these are all problems that I have. Where do I start? I have no idea, but I will know if we can have a conversation. So down below, I have a link to schedule a call with me. Very simple, 30 minutes. We kind of just poke around in your business, see what the biggest gap is, where the most leverage is. And at that point, it's like, hey, here's the leverage in your business. Here's what needs to be done. Go take this and go do it. And if you're like, oh, that's too hard, then we could talk about working together. But that's beyond the point. With all of this being said, the name of the game is how can we get more leverage out of your business? How can we get this to be set up so that 10 hours actually generates $200, or just as valuable, you're able to make $100 off of just 5 hours of work in this fictitious example I'm just making up? How can we, again, same output, but same input, but increase output? Or how can we decrease input, but get the exact same output? These are the questions that we are looking at when we want to scale a company. And with that being said, we would love to scale your company. So again, in the description of this video, there is a link to book a call. I would love to talk with you about your business. And if you're like, this is super cool, give me more examples. This YouTube channel is literally built around case studies of us solving bottlenecks and what we're able to implement, as well as in-depth how-to guides in order to implement specific systems that allow your company to scale. Because ultimately, we want you to know we're not full of shit. We know what we're talking about, and we want to show you proof that we understand what it looks like and how to go through it in these different ways. Because the more you can understand how this goes, in the most ideal world, you can actually solve these problems yourself, because that'd be the most ideal thing. And if not, we'd love to help you. And with that being said, thank you so much for your time. Really appreciate it. I hope to see you around the internet. Later.